Aisha Cosmos.
You tell me today you want to know about the Toltecs, and what I have been able to gather and verify personally is that it is true they were not a culture native of Mexico, but they were men or women of knowledge. And for a Toltec, the definition of knowledge is always pertaining to knowledge of the self and being able to know yourself, not just emotionally, spiritually, but energetically, and to be able to see the truth of who you really are. And that's why part of the Toltec path is to have the possibility to become a seer and to be able to see energy directly and to be able to either look at the world of things or see the energy matrix that is behind everything. And they make very interesting observations about the way that what we see here looks like when you look at it through the seeing into the direct energy fields that are behind this dreamscape interpretation. Toltecs were the most dedicated scientists of consciousness and perception. And they went through many different, cycles with their knowledge. And even just the lineages that are left today that became like the last remain of this long lineages. Like one of the teachers was part of a 26th generation Toltec teacher to student, teacher to student. And in the Toltec principles, since all of it is dictated by spirit, then the student is selected by spirit and presented to the teacher. And the teacher has a capacity to perceive, so it can see what spirit is commanding for that. And so a Toltec is any human on the planet that gets to such a depth of knowledge of the self that becomes a Toltec. So it's like a rank of awareness. And the Toltec thing has three layers. There's to be a Toltec of the first attention, a Toltec of the second attention, and then a Toltec of the third attention. And if I recall correctly, the Toltec of the first attention is somebody that begins to work with its energy and with its focus and with its intent and can, I don't know, maybe make it rain or bring down a lightning bolt or be able to maybe even enter somebody's dream space, but is not yet able to see how all of this is happening. So it's like you have a capacity to affect the world, but you cannot see the forces that are in play and all the things, how it's happening. You cannot see the actual divine architecture that is bringing everything into materialization. And so with the Toltec first attention, you can command forces that you do not yet understand or perceive accurately. And Toltecs at the time of the conquest had to face a really serious matter, because up until that time they had developed, because this whole continent was like based on sorcery, Mayans and whatever, like the dream power and the psychedelics and all of the capacity to channel information and knowledge from the dream time. The Yaqui Indians did it, and they're like peyote tribe, and then also the Huicholes also have dream time, and the Mayan healers also heal in the dream time. And it's like all of this lucid dreaming practice, full sorcery practice, in the capacity to interact with the forces of nature and bring your intent into influence with reality. And so they were very good at these very elaborate processes, rituals, whatever that they developed to be able to influence reality. And that's just all how they all fought their battles. But then when the Spaniards came, And it was really, they were outmatched because they didn't have systems that were instant. It was this very lengthy processes, all this ceremony, all this stuff. And so by the time they would even begin, they would already be dead. So they were like, oh my God, all this power that we thought we had is useless in the face of this stuff. So now retreat, retreat, no, and they went into hiding. And so then they scrapped everything they knew and they began from zero. And they were like, okay, let's analyze this. What the hell is the core foundation? And that was distilled into this structure of what concrete Toltec unit it is called. In the Toltec mythology, because they have like their own mythology of how Toltecs came to be. So supposedly back in the beginning of time, or whenever the birth of the earth, Great Spirit put on earth the very first Nagal man and Nagal woman. And these were like Toltec seers that their whole thing is the quest for freedom and the depth of self-knowledge. And so that is like the ultra command, and bestowed the Nagalman and Nagalgoman the first unit, which is composed of 8 women, 2 for each direction. One is a dreamer, the other one is a stalker. And so these are like the main foundational practices that are the cornerstone of someone's faculty. You can either be a natural stalker or a natural dreamer, and everybody has to do both, but you are predominantly one or the other. In the other side, there's also the male structure, and so there's like the man behind the scenes, the man of action, there's a courier, and then there's also the Nagal. And so each one belongs to a particular direction. And it is so amazing how it is really truly anchored into this structure of the 4 directions, and then in the 4 directions of the practices themselves. So these are like the 4 directions of the people, and each direction person has its own temperament and what they're particularly good at or what is their natural talent. But then there's also the practice, and it's their alignment with the 4 directions, so that in the east, which is the sunrise and the beginning, you have recapitulation. And so that is to begin by reclaiming the energy of the past and be able to bring it back into the present moment, and to be able to liberate oneself from the energy we took from different experiences that we went through. And in doing so, we gain the capacity to see ourselves through time, and how we behaved and how we spoke and how we reacted and the conclusions that we came to. And all of a sudden we can see ourselves more objectively into how all the stuff that happened in our life was completely catalyzed by our relationship to it, and how we interpreted it and how we reacted. Recapitulation is supposed to be the beginning also because Toltecs say that we are born with a finite battery pack. They say that people that are born with no orgasm have a very small battery pack. People that are conceived with orgasm have a bigger battery pack, but one or the other, the battery pack runs out. It's like finite energy. I think it begins to be used up by the time you're like 20 or something. So that's why little babies can learn so fast, and everything's like, oh, they're picking it up. Oh, it's just a sponge. It's just because it has the full battery pack available for learning. Once it gets to a certain age, it's more just sort of repetition after that. And so Toltecs know that to get energy for changing in the present, there is nowhere to attain it other than the past, to the energy you already used, and to get it back and recycle it to be able to use for the new. And so this like directions thing moves into the north, which is stalking. And stalking is a capacity to stalk your own behavior and to be able to face your fears systematically by putting yourself into positions of needing to interact with a tyrant or somebody that has control over you, and that is exactly pressing in like your wound or something that naturally makes you susceptible to this, whatever it is. And so usually back in the day, Toltec that actually had a teacher and was in this sort of Toltec unit, the student would be placing itself in this type of situations with the sort of coaching of the teacher, because many of this realignment of consciousness point of view exercises that a Toltec would ideally be able to undergo require being able to transcend self importance or self compassion, not pity for yourself, feeling sorry for yourself. A Toltec cannot accomplish nothing by feeling sorry for itself and by having self importance, because these are stemming from separation, and automatically it puts one at a disadvantage. Because in the Toltec path, there comes a point where practices can be continued to be done for absolute liberation of all belief structures, reclaiming of all your life force, reinventing yourself in divine alignment to your sacred promise, like the reason why you were born to do whatever it is that you came here to do. Or you can be going through the wound of separation into feeling the need to control the world or to create an alternate reality for yourself. There are some stories of very powerful Toltecs that were in the sort of shadow side of Toltequity, and they were so reluctant to surrendering to the will of the divine because they like rejected completely anything like that from the separation wound, that through their dream power and all of the parts of themselves that they developed, they would be able to create a full world that would be all sustained by their own dream energy. And so they would maybe be people and cities or like a planet, but it's not an actual planet other people live in. It is a planet that Toltec can live in, but it is keeping into action everything that is happening so that it is interacting with itself all the time. There isn't actually another that it can have a conversation with. All the beings, everything, all the trees, all the way that the world is set up, it's all its own self, its own creation. And so it is like this extreme isolation and a little insight into how one person that learns this type of teachings can just take this stuff into this direction that is like the Voldemort story now. And so Toltecs explain that because through the stalking of your behavior, which is in the north, you learn to push yourself into modes of behavior that completely take you out of your mold. Because the idea is to be able to be utterly flexible and to blend into any situation and to be able to look like nobody or to look like royalty or to be imperceptible and for nobody even to notice that you're there. And so it's almost as if Toltecs are masters of these guys, but they do the full energy of it. Like they practice so flawlessly whatever behavior they're training to embody as a way of also dismantling their own habits. So you usually choose having to step into behaviors that really challenge your belief systems. Not like if you're some lowly dude that became Toltec that used to be some like starving kid on the highway, and all of a sudden now you're being trained into this thing. Maybe you have to learn to wear a tailored suit and eat a perfect meal and be super fluid in your conversation and learn all the dictionary words, and so it's like an actual discipline of dismantling behavior patterns. The energy you get from recapitulation is invested into the awareness of what to stop yourself about, because through recapitulation you begin to see the trajectory and the story and the pattern and the continuity of the thread.
If you are interested in Sacred Day excursions, book today at ayeshacosmos.com.